Have with us the chief guests for today's program, and let us welcome Professor Dr. Maurits Van Rooijen from Switzerland on travel. Sir, welcome and greetings from India. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and being with us. And Sir is the Chief Executive Academic Group Rector, Global University System, London, a seasoned academicians having global no network of no universities and very resourceful person. And I requested sir, instead of his busy schedule, sir has agreed, even he is on a travel, to join and enlighten all of us on the today's topic, universities without walls, the open, sustainable and autonomous university. So, sir, welcome to you, and please take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed for your kind introduction, and thank you very much for having me as your guest here today, and thank you for those wonderful welcome words as well, which are actually very inspiring and a perfect match, I think, with what I can say at this symposium, at this conference. Yes, indeed, I'm speaking from Switzerland at the moment. I'm flying today to London. I just attended a large consortium meeting, something like 70 universities from all over Europe and beyond, actually, also South America and so on, Latin America, to get together and discuss some very important points of working together. And it also explains why I'm maybe looking at a little bit in a dark environment. My apologies for that. It is actually very early here. It's not even 7 o'clock in the morning yet, and the sun hasn't come up yet. So I'm in a hotel room with hotel room lighting, which is admittedly not ideal, but I hope you bear with me. It's a great pleasure to join me, and I absolutely 100% agree with what was said about working and learning is living. You cannot really work in today's environment, and especially not in the context of a knowledge economy, in a senior position without a continuous commitment to learning. I define my own position as Chief Academic Officer of Global University Systems, which I will say a little bit more in a moment, indeed as a learning process. And even when I was in university management for many decades, when I'm a president of a university, I always say I'm the best student. I try to be the best student, learning as a president what is needed. And so at the moment, yes, I'm a little bit, maybe as a quick introduction for those who obviously do not know me, I started off my life as a proper academic in sustainable urbanization in the early 1980s at my alma mater, the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. I'm originally Dutch. And been active in my academic field of green urbanization, sustainable urbanization for a long time. But at the same time, I'm also since maybe 35 years or something like that, working in senior management positions at universities, and including university president positions. And 10 years ago, I was approached by a young entrepreneur who listened to what I said about the impact of globalization on higher education. And he said, well, globalization, higher education, if you really want to do it the way you want it, which was setting up the first university system at a global level, so the first university system, American style, of a very diverse group of universities, at a global level, then obviously you can only do that in the private sector. So why don't we do this together? So 10 years ago, we launched Global University Systems. It now operates something like 25, 30 universities around the world, especially in Canada, UK, Germany, several Europe, of course also in India. Pearl Academy might be known to you, which is part of our group. UPES in northern India, the University for Petroleum and Energy Studies, is part of our group. And we are still expanding very rapidly. And it is truly a university system. And we are indeed operating at a global level. And that is really an application of what was just said in the introduction. And that is the importance of knowledge not just of teaching, but of knowledge. The advancement of knowledge, it's driven by curiosity. And that means you need to have your eyes and ears open all the time and be receptive and ask questions, wonder all the time why things are and why they are not the way you might expect them to be. And one of my points is, of course, if the entire world and the knowledge economies are so much intertwined with globalization, how can it be that it means for a university only something in the margin, like, oh, let's have some student exchanges, let maybe bring in a guest lecture. It's very, very marginal. Whilst in fact, it is actually just as important for universities, not just for our teaching, but even for the universities as institutions, as for any other sector in the society. And I would argue even more than any other sector in the society, because after all, universities are supposed to lead. We are not followers of globalization. We are supposed to lead globalization in a positive direction. And that is also why I feel so strongly about this, that we actually give value to what we do as well. And then, of course, the other factor, which I would like to add to the knowledge, is the creativity. Knowledge can be just about applying knowledge, but actually, when you really want to drive knowledge solutions, you need creativity. You need to come up with creative answers to the problems we are seeing. And of course, many of our problems are local, but many of our problems are also global. Actually, more and more of our problems are on a global scale, and our students, our graduates, and so on need to be able to think in those global terms. And this is why I think it's not just important from the university as an institution, or dare I say, as a business, but certainly also from the individual education perspective. Globalization is very much at the core of that, and I've been dedicating a large part of my life to it. Now, what makes global university systems quite a different answer to the question about, the need for universities to lead in globalization, is that what I've called somewhere, we move from a tree to a forest. A university is a tree, and a very valuable tree, and we have to look well after that tree. But we should not forget that actually we are one tree in a big forest of other trees. And those trees together, whether it is at regional level, at national level, but even at world level, form our ecosystem. And what Global University System is trying to do is create its own ecosystem by bringing very different types of universities together. So some universities might be focused in terms of academic disciplines, a bit more on arts or business or law or technology or medicine, etc. So they all have their own specializations, but they also have their own geographic roots. And they also have a slightly different types of students, which have to do with slightly different admission standards, and actually also teach very often in slightly different ways. So some a bit more conventional on campus, others are very much online, some are, many of us are blended, etc. So this is what is making our thinking about the university, actually as the university in the context of a university system, as I said, is of course a very well established concept in the United States. There are many university systems in the United States, but all in the public sector. Our concept of a university system, this diversity, this own ecosystem, this forest of institutions, is actually at a global level. And as I said, we now operate something like 25, 30 educational institutions around the world, and we're still growing very fast. In addition to that, we also work closely in partnership. So it's not that we always have to own those institutions. The equally important, I would stress that equally important, are actually partnerships with other institutions for academic reasons, but also sometimes for non-academic reasons, because the way the system works is that we have back office services we share. We have a lot of things which actually make us more cost effective. So it's otherwise it would not work as a business. So of course, you do not make money on education as such. You make money exactly on the non-academic aspects of education, and that's the part we try to do in a more cost-effective way. And this is also why the group also, as a commercial enterprise, is healthy. So it's looking at higher education in a different way, and that is no longer purely from the tree perspective, but really from a system perspective, though I do not say that trees are not important. On the contrary, without trees, you do not have forest. So as a consequence of that, I'm also more hands-on involved in some of our institutions, and that also reflects in, for instance, that I'm the president of a German university we acquired a few years ago, a University of Europe. And the reason for that is because that allows me to be also more hands-on involved. And what I do with that particular university is actually using it almost like an incubator. It's really completely dedicated to innovation, to do things in a different way, being creative. It is a German university with indefinite accreditation nowadays. It has the highest level of accreditation in Germany. It has its own degree awarding powers, etc., without any secondary supervision for, every 6 years or something like that, they drop by. But so it's a perfect place within that ecosystem to actually try out new things and say, what are the solutions we are looking for in this rapidly developing world? Now, one of them, of course, is what was said earlier, this thinking without walls, right? We replacing those walls, creating actually much more open space in between disciplines, but also between the different sectors in society, and so on, and create more symbiotic relationships in the different sectors. And that's what we are doing. So, for instance, when it comes to digitalization, we do not treat that as something separate. We don't say this is an online university, this is what we teach on campus, etc. This kind of binary thinking, which was introduced also by regulators and so on. So they want to know very clearly, is it on campus or is it digital? Right? Well, the truth is, in the modern world, you cannot think in those kind of boxes anymore. You should not want to think in those kind of boxes anymore. You just have to say, well, this is part of the student choice. Sometimes they prefer to do something asynchronous online. Sometimes they want to do it synchronous online. Sometimes they want to be on campus, and we want them to be on campus. But we actually create all these tools of learning in a much more fluid way. The same in terms of discipline. So rather than trying to lock students up too much in disciplines, actually from day one, we really want them to mix disciplines together, learn from other disciplines as well, and especially also at postgraduate level. Many of our degree programs are actually exactly focused on that. And we go even further. It's not just the degree programs, it's even the entire campuses. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment is creating and transforming campuses into what I call innovation hubs. And I'll give you concrete examples of that. So we opened a new campus last year in Potsdam, which is just outside Berlin. And I didn't call it a campus anymore. I said, this is an innovation hub. It doesn't look like a campus. It's in the middle of a business park, right? And its focus is on having relationships with business. And the focus is it has this very clear angle. It's not doing everything. Its angle is on the triangle of design, technology, and business entrepreneurship. Right. So the students are actually studying in that triangle of business, technology, and design, creativity. And of course, this is very interesting for business. It's interesting for businesses like IBM or Tesla, etc., because they want their senior people to think creatively, to understand what creativity is about, because that is the lifeblood of those kind of companies. But at the same time, they also want them to be entrepreneurial. They don't want artists floating in the sky, in the clouds. They want really people who also actually then understand what is actually how does the business world work? What is the entrepreneurial mindset? And of course, they want people to understand technology. How can you be really effective in the modern world unless you understand the basics of software engineering or data analytics, etc., etc. So we create this innovation hub, which actually operates in that triangle. So this has been a very big success, and the numbers of students are growing very fast. And there's a huge interest both from government and from business, local business, but even at the global level. So I'm now working on a second innovation hub, and there's actually an existing campus we have, which has also some space. which I'm now actually transforming into an innovation hub for health. And it's again a triangle or maybe a square between health, well-being, like sports and so on as well. It's not just medicine, it's also really about quality of life, healthy living, well-being, combined with, again, business and technology, right? So this is where you want to have innovation happening. And where that one is different is not just in terms of academic discipline, but it's also different in the sense that because we have land there, we now actually start creating our own ecosystem around that campus. So we have an arrangement with the city which has given green light for a property developer to actually bring things like senior living, midwifery, certain practices, as well as student accommodation and so on, onto that area. So that we are not only teaching and studying, but we actually also are actively involved in innovation in the health sector, together with companies, together with external partners, external stakeholders, and so on. So this is where you really create your own living lab. And the people, of course, know that what they can get there is the really innovative approaches, not just to cures of for their illness and so on, but also purely for seeking a better quality of life. It's also a very attractive forest, is next to a lake, etc. So it's quite suitable for that approach. And again, we do this with international partners, right? So I want to stress again, it's our model, not just to have our own institution, but also then work in partnerships. So we have partnerships for that campus with British universities, with Portuguese universities. We obviously also will want to in Potsdam to have an institution like UPass to come on board and so on. So it's really also about double degree programs. It's about professors from other parts of the world teaching virtually to those students, because, as I said earlier, we don't make that distinction anymore between teaching on campus and teaching off campus. We really mix that all together. And this model is we launched it only recently. As I said, we used the university as an incubator, but it's now also, for instance, in the authorities in Dubai, very keen that we build a replica of the Potsdam's innovation hub in Dubai, and use that there also as an example of how to approach education in a different way. Now, the third and final point I want to make, because I know it's, I should not overload you with a lot of information, but I thought I'd just give the kind of the three key points, which is about the globalization, about the tree to forest. It's about the digitalization, but also about the interdisciplinarity and the role of innovation hub. But then the final point is completely related to what I just said, and that is taking that wall away, if I can use that making sure the wall collapses between work and learning, and get a continuous interaction between working and learning. Not just, oh, well, it's nice for our students to do a placement in a company. No, actually really build that in to the learning process. We call that, of course, working integrated learning, right? So we build practice, whether that is in a company or volunteering learning, it's all kind of forms of experiential learning into the learning process. And I'm very passionate about this. I'm actually the co-chairman of the World Association for Cooperative and Experiential Learning, WACE, and we promote this all over the world. We are a big organization, and I also apply it at my own institution and within the university system. Make sure our students are continuously translating this conceptual knowledge they pick up in the classroom into workplace situations or real world situations, and bring that back into the classroom and discuss that with the fellow students, discuss that with the professor, and so on. Discuss that in teams as well. I also use it as actually getting people to understand how important it is to work in teams, and even get students to understand how important it is to work virtually in teams. Again, don't make that distinction anymore between online and on campus. It is equally important in the modern world that students know how to work in a team in person, but also how to work in a global team, in a multicultural team, overcome maybe some language obstacles and so on. And because that's the reality of the modern world, right? That is what globalization is really about. Those walls are all gone. And so work integrated learning is very important, but I add to that learning integrated work. So seeing graduation not as a final point of destination, but only see it as one milestone of many milestones in one's life. And I come back to where we started. You know, working is learning. So how can you then say I'm a graduate? I'm a graduate now, I have all the knowledge I have for the rest of my life. That is very outdated thinking. That is really no longer of the 21st century. That is not suitable for a knowledge economy. You cannot say that the graduation is a final point and now have what we Americans call commencement the rest of your life. That is a very archaic way of looking at education. It is about work integrated learning, which then gets into learning integrated work. And it is very important to work continuously with employers to actually get them to understand the importance of learning integrated work, because otherwise their employees will get stuck, otherwise their companies will get stuck, otherwise they lose also the drive, the curiosity, which is necessary for knowledge. Otherwise they get stuck in doing things in a certain way and they lose their creativity, and the creativity is the lifeblood of a company's success. So we need each other there. Right. So the work integrated learning and learning integrated work, which are both equally important, in my view, for the success of a globalized knowledge economy. And that's very much at the core of what I'm trying to promote in my own institution, in my own institutions as chief academic officer for the entire system, but also amongst other universities around the world, really to embrace the new times. Not be defensive, not be reluctantly following, not following because the government tells us to follow it, but actually embrace it and say, this is our opportunity to lead globalization, lead the knowledge economies and so on from the front. And that's, I think, also very important, understanding that leading comes with obligations, it comes also with values. And that we also understand that globalization is not necessarily a positive thing. It can also be a very negative thing. The same way entrepreneurship can be a very negative thing. We always seem to think it's a positive thing, but if entrepreneurship is driven by greed, it's a very negative thing. Leadership, as we know in history, can be very positive, but it can also be very negative if it's driven by the wrong values, right? So that part of knowledge, of education, is also very important, that we actually get our students to understand that they're doing things for a certain purpose, and that purpose should be a positive one. So positive leadership, positive entrepreneurship, positive stewardship as well in the growing world, in the growing knowledge economy. So those are my words I wanted to add. I hope they were sometimes a little bit provocative. They certainly intended like that. Because I know you are keen on a discussion, so I'm happily hand back to your conference. But it was a great privilege and pleasure to be able to join you and hopefully stimulate the further discussion a little bit more. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, sir, for your sharing your experience and wisdom.
You are on mute, Mr. President.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your presence and sharing your experience and wisdom, having worked with so many universities across the world. And you rightly said that even you have University of Petroleum and Energy from Dehradun, northern part of India, which is part of University World System in your network, and wonderful stimulation. So many areas you have touched upon. And I'm sure that this will set the today's agenda right. And having said that, just let me add a little bit add on so that now we go to the next speaker. As you have rightly said, now last 2.5 years due to COVID, we have seen that the world is moving from globalization to regionalization because of restrictions and limitations on student mobility and the resources and the pandemic, of course. Now, the impact of Russian invasion to Ukraine and the kind of pressure, global pressure, is putting on the scholars from Russia in other universities across the world, wherever they are studying. I think that's something we need to give a serious thought on that, with any kind of geopolitical conflict and its effect on higher education. Along with the refugee education, which is a big concern in Rohingya, we have one member of parliament from Bangladesh. I think Sir will delve onto it, that how we can ensure that refugees, from Syria, from Rohingya, and so many other parts of the world, their concerns can be addressed. Now, you were talking about something walls in terms of industry institute interface, but there are counter no arguments no in education, like no too much corporatization of education. We're trying to feed in corporate. I think that may not be the sole purpose of education, because if you look at the industry, the kind of skills they're looking for, we see that every time that no the industry needs and requirements are changing. So how we can look at the education so that we can really make holistic development in the students, and create an attitude of learning the new things. I think the mindset change, I think that would be the big challenge. Now, some experts say that moving forward, maybe 10 years from the now, that one of the skill which everyone would be looking for is humanity, how you can connect with the human, one person to the another person, because technology can be learned, technology can be put into practice, and that's always will be a facilitator that cannot take over the education per se. So I think there are a lot of no contradictory views on education because of this COVID, and so many accepted norms in the education also, which has gone topsy turvy. Like so, I think that is one part we need to look in while we're thinking. I think you have rightly pointed out that still we have a mindset. Now, once the university has gone to off campus, we still have a mindset that to differentiate between off campus to on campus, and 10% of the lessons should be delivered through online mode. Those kind of mechanisms are there, but I think we should not differentiate. I think that's the right approach, as you have rightly pointed out, between no on campus and the off campus. The option should be given to the students what all they would like to take up. I think being on online, there are a lot of as you rightly said, as far as expenses are concerned, I think many institutions, they have taken up the lean philosophy, and around the world, in US and other parts of the world, I have seen that people are talking about for profit education, non for profit education, and how we can make higher education free. Is it possible? Can it be done through university collaboration with the industry? Now, more of industry chairs, more of industry sponsored project, and the research and the consulting and the MDP. Can the professors in the university earn huge amount which can offset the student fees? The US, the biggest challenge in the US in the West is the repayment of the student fees. They are struggling even after going out of the campus. I think that's the biggest challenge. Then how we can ensure that education and knowledge moves freely? I think we create an ecosystem across the world wherein we can ensure. Now, there is another aspect what people are talking about. Now, the difference between formal education and non-formal education, and you will be knowing that World Bank, they have a project of recognition of prior experience. We see a lot of expertise, right? A lot of expertise on the roadside vendors. I think those who repair computers, they may be far, far better than computer engineer. I'm sure you will agree with me, without any formal qualification. So what kind of efforts university or creativity and innovation, what we're talking about, can really take up to recognize their expertise level and bring them into the mainstream to contribute for the corporate, even for even at the university level? I think they can come and teach some of the hands-on laboratory practice to the students. There is nothing wrong in that. I think these are one of the walls. The preconceived notion, the perception of the academic world, I think that itself, we need to break it. I think otherwise, people say that there are a lot of challenges bringing industry into corporate because of the mindset, because of the academic mindset. At the same time, the corporate has a different kind of mindset, and there is a gap. And because of this mismatch across the world, not only in India, even in the other parts of the world also, there is a huge gap between industry institute partnership. I'm sure that your views, there will be a lot of other eminent speakers you have lined up, those who will elaborately express their thoughts and experience on these points moving forward. Thank you so much once again Namaskar from India, Bangalore, being with us. Professor, it's a pleasure. And we need your blessings as a senior professional to move on and to take forward the MTC global activities. Thank you so much, sir. Please, if time permits, be with us. We have other eminent speakers online, and whenever you feel, please, and be in touch after the program as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.